Okay, this video I'm going to talk about a couple of S&OP problems, which you need to use aggregate planning techniques. So to my experience, this type of problem gave my student the biggest headache in the past. This isn't exactly a very difficult type of problem, but I thought about it. Why? I think it's because each problem is different and there is no very convenient solution you can use so that you can repeatedly exploit that particular techniques to solve this type of problem. And every problem is different, therefore you need to assess every problem differently. And there are multiple areas you need to be careful. So there's really no magic formula for this type of problem. I think there are only two things. You need to be mindful, or you need to aware what's the demand, what is the primary way you are seeking to fulfill the demand. Number two is what are some constraints. Okay, so one tells you the big direction. Number two really tells you what you need to be careful in pursuing that direction. So in terms of direction, we talk about demand chasing, leveling, right? Subcontracting, overtime. Those are the big directions. But with the constraints, and each problem could be slightly different. Some problem will give you the constraints on the overtime. Some problem will give you different type of constraints that you can't really solve each problem with convenience. Okay, so let's take some time to take a look at the question number 7, which to my view, this is slightly challenging when compared to the problems that are assigned as homework. So let's take a look. So this particular company is a disk drive manufacturer, is in need of aggregate planning for July through December. The company has gathered the following data. So you have a first table as a cost parameter, second table as some other informations, with this information being very important. 8 hours production per day. Okay, so 8-hour production per day. And you have 8 people, right? And then each disk requires 4 human hours. So if you only had one worker, that means in a single day, you can only make 2 disks. Because you make people work 8 hours, they can only make 1 in every 4 hours, right? This is sort of like your 1 over mu in waiting line problem. And your mu is 2. Okay, if you're talking about the system with only one person working the factory, then you have 8 people. And in every month you have 20 work days, and you are beginning with 150, and ending inventory is 0 disk drive. This is a bit vague. I'm not sure whether this is telling us we should end this problem with a 0 inventory, or I'm not sure. We'll see. So looks like we have to begin with 150 here. Okay, we'll begin with 150. So the first strategy we should try to fulfill all those demand, which we should use to try to fulfill all those demand, is called vary the workforce so the production approximates demand. This kind of scares me. Approximates demand. Remember, this is similar to the demand chasing strategy, but remember, in demand chasing, you would hire or fire your personnel at all costs, just so that you can catch all the demand. Okay, in the problems that we discussed as a classroom example, we never tied our production capacity to the head count. Here we are relying on the head count instead of basically just the production capacity. So that can give us a little bit of headache, because that's the reason why this is saying to approximate the demand. Specifically, I can see that no costs are incurred for unmet demand. So you can, this does not consider the shortage cost. It does not consider the backorder cost. And when computing the personnel on staff, if 0.5 or more an employee is needed, round up, I hire more. If less than 0.5, round down. So this can give us little headache, but again, we need to we need to be prepared for anything. So let's take a look. You have 150, you need 400. So using the MRP fashion, just call it net requirements. Okay, so in terms of net requirements, we're talking about 250. So we need to determine how many people to hire more or lay off. So for that reason, we should think about how many hours are needed to make 250 unit of discs. So from here, you see each disc requires 4 hours. Okay, each disk requires 4 hours. So 1,000 hours are needed to make 250. So during the July, you need to have 1,000 hours. So you have a 20 work days. So each day you need to have 50 hours. Okay, 50 hours is equivalent to 12.5 disks. Okay, so you need to make sure, you need to guarantee that you have enough people so that they can make 12.5 disks every day. So remember, 50 hours divided by 8. So you need 6.25 people for the month of July in order to meet the 250 by the end of July. So remember, the instruction here says round it down. So we're just going to use 6 people here. Okay, so with the 6 people, it's each person has 8 hours, 20 days. This is total number of hours. Okay, and we're going to divide it by 4. We can get this many discs during the month of July. So as you can see that we started with 8 people, but we only need 6 people. Therefore, we need to lay off 2 people. Okay, but here, I think the beginning inventory, we should begin with a negative number, as you can see from here. Okay, I would make it more clear, but this is a back order situation because you only have 390 when you need 400. So they are allowing back order, so negative 10. So your net requirement here is going to be this. Your net requirement for the August is 510. Okay, 510. So again, you're tinkering with a number of personnels so they can get close to this particular requirement. So again, let me do it. 510. This is total number of hours needed. Okay, so this is approximately 2 times what you see from here. So I'm just going to put 12 here to see what the number is going to look like. Okay, so times 8 times 20 divided by 4. So we got 480 here. So what if we type 13? So 13 looks better. 13 looks better. Let me do it again. So 2040, okay? 2040 is total number of hours needed to make 510, which is the net requirement for August. So what this means is you divide it by 20 days. So each day, this is number of hours you need each day. So each person works 8 hours. So 12.75 workers you need, so that you have this many hours each day. Eventually you have this many hours this month, so that you can have this many units. However, as instruction, you are rounding up. So 13 is, why 13 is the right answer here. It's because this process. So as you can see, we need to hire 7 more people. So I'm gonna assume that the rest of the steps is gonna be something similar to what we have done here. So do you have any beginning inventory here? Yes, you do have 10 beginning from the previous period. And your net requirement is 540. Okay, 540. We can do this process again. Yeah, let's do it. 540 times 4, okay, divided by 20 and divided by 8. So you need 13.5 person, so or more, and round it up. So I'm going to round it up to 14. So if it's 14, I think this is going to give us 560, and you are hiring 1 more. Good. And do we have any excess inventory or no? I guess we begin with a 10. So makes 570, but you only need 550. So you have 20 remaining inventories, right? So that makes your net requirement 680. 680. Let's do the same process. Yeah, I should have just did it right next to it, but you get the idea. So we need 17 people. We need exactly 17 people here. Exactly 17 people. Exactly 680, which is good. You're hiring 3 people more. And you're beginning with a 0. Let's do the same this time. I can just do it right away here. Net requirement is 800, right? So net requirement 800. So 800 times 4 divided by 20 divided by 8. So you need 20 people so that you have 800 unit. Okay? 800 unit. And you are hiring 3 people more. So last period, so your net requirement is 700. 700, and you have 0 beginning inventory. Unit produced is, okay, do it again, times 4 divided by 20 divided by 8. Again, let's see. Oh, I shouldn't do that. Times 8 times 20 divided by 4. Okay, this is better. And the difference is, of course, this what it is. Remember, we're not allowed to have the fraction number of employees. Okay, so you need to determine whether we should round it up or round it down. But I see an issue here. If you round it up, which is 18 people, that will give you... So rounding up here is part of this requirement, which is something I would consider do. However, in doing this, you are creating 20 excess inventory, which conflicts with this particular requirement. Ending inventory is 0. So that's a little tricky, but I guess if you look up the solution, 18 is the way to go. Okay, so just gonna go with 18 here. So with this, we're calculating the total inventory holding cost. So do you have any other cost other than holding cost? Yeah, it's only holding cost here. So let's take a look at the items that are subject to the holding cost. So if you look at information here, no holding cost for June. So this 150 is not subject to any holding cost. And unit short isn't exactly subject to any holding cost. So those two quantities and this quantity together, which is 50 excess inventory in the period, with each excess inventory incurring $8. So 50 times 8 is going to be 400. That's why you see 400 as inventory holding cost. In terms of hiring cost, how many people we have hired? You see we have hired 14 people. We have hired 14 people over time. So with each hiring, it costs $40. So we hired, as you can see from sum, 14, right? So hiring cost, 14 times 40, which is 560. Layoff cost. We laid off 4 people, right? Each $80 to $320. So if you look at the solution, this is what it is. The total cost excluding normal time labor cost is, I think, repetition. So you add all of them. Okay, so 400. Add all of them. This is 1280. That's the solution for the first approach. Okay, the beauty of it is it has another approach, another planning technique here, or planning strategy here. Vary over time only and use a constant workforce of 8. So this is much easier. This is actually much easier approach. So vary over time, only use a constant workforce of 8. So regardless of your monthly demand, this is reminding you how you should only use 8 people throughout the period. Okay, so 8 people. So this is what's provided from the MyLab. Okay, so I only needed to fill in this part. So from the setup, it looks like you're allowed to use the overtime production. So whenever you don't have enough inventory to meet the demand, you would outsource things. No, you're not outsourcing it. You're using overtime production. I'm saying this is convenient because this is not adding any constraints to what's the maximum number of overtime you can use. Okay, so that's making it very, very convenient. I'm saying it again. So when you copy this thing over to the Excel, this is a table I got. Okay, so your production 320. Why this is 320? So let's see, 8 constant people. Each person work 8 hours. They're 20 days. Okay, and this is total number of hours. And you need 4 hours per unit. So that's why you have a 320 here. And here is overtime capacity. It does tell us what's the overtime capacity. This is not here, but this did show up in a copy over to Excel version. So it's also showing the subcontracting capacity, which basically means you're not allowed to subcontracting anything. Okay, so this is not useless. This is at least reminding you the subcontract is not possible here. Anyway, so you have 150 from the previous period. Okay, so let's figure out the ending inventory. 150, you made 320. Your demand is 400. Okay, which is good. You have 70 excess. So you didn't have to use any overtime. Here, this part is overtime production, which is good. And for the August, you have 70 plus 320. Okay, and obviously, I don't think we have any ending inventory here because you know what? This is what it is. We are 110 units short. So instead of writing this down here, think I should move this to here. Okay, you have a 0 ending in this period. You need to use some overtime capacity here to fulfill 110. So because 110 is smaller than 500, which is maximum overtime you can use, so we can simply put 110 here. So there's no beginning inventory next period, right? So the difference here between the production with the demand is basically the unit short, or that's basically this difference here is basically the quantity you should rely on the overtime. Again, you compare this with the overtime maximum capacity is 550, so you don't have to worry about it. Just leave 232 overtime. Okay, with the ending inventory 0. I think we can just keep repeating this, because if you observe it, any quantity I see here is basically bigger than the production capacity. Therefore, I assume that every month we'll need to use the overtime capacity unless this quantity is bigger than the maximum overtime capacity. So, but none of them are actually bigger, so I can just safely put 380, 480, 380 here. All right, and ending inventory wise, we don't have any ending inventory because we throughout the period we're kind of short. So I don't know whether your version looks a little different, that you should think a little bit more. But the key here, it looks like, is to test your ability in assessing how to incorporate those two components into the aggregate planning process. So anytime if you see those numbers become a little bigger than either this or this, then it's time for you to do a little differently. Okay, for example, if we had to deal with a demand of 900 during the month of October, the difference is 580, it's still smaller than here. Okay, for example, let me do it here. I'm going to change it to 1800 here, okay? 1800 here, as you can see that we are short by a huge margin. But where do you go to fulfill this? So in that case, 700 is the maximum capacity you can use, overtime capacity you can use. So this is what you need to do. You cannot go an hour more beyond this capacity. But you're still like 780 short. Even after overtime is used, then you should start to consider, can I go use some subcontractors? But since the subcontracting capacity is 0, that means this demand has to be lost. Okay, so this is it. I hope that this example kind of improved your understanding with S&OP. Since this video is a little long, I'm going to review next S&OP problem in a separate video. Okay, thank you.